All right, we are super excited to have Ryan Storch, who is a 2017 Coppell grad and a real estate agent. Thanks so much for coming to being part of our class.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mr. Simpson, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute joy. Really excited to talk to you guys today.
So we were talking a few minutes before we started recording about how you. So, give me where'd you go to college?
I went to Texas A&M. I
Texas
graduated in
A&M.
2021. Yep.
So Gig'em Nation,
Yep.
right? Okay, there you go. You got your thing. Okay, my wife's whole family is all Gig'em as well. And
Yep.
then and the whoops and all that. And then so from there you come back to Coppell to start real estate, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I graduated. I started real estate right after college. I moved back to Coppell right after college, and I've been in real estate since.
Okay, and what was your degree in?
My degree was in business. It's technically like a multiple thing. It was in business honors and marketing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Why not pursue a career in that? Why go into real estate?
So I thought I was going to, but I ended up realizing with your major, there's a lot of spins that you can do with what you've learned. And so for me, I decided, hey, I learned a lot about marketing and a lot about like salesmanship and a lot about how to promote something.
Yeah.
And real estate ultimately is owning your own business. And so I thought, okay, if I can just learn the skill of real estate, I can apply all of my marketing knowledge into getting my brand out there. So it was kind of like something that I never thought would connect, but it
Yeah.
ended up working really well.
Okay, so you get out, you come back to Coppell, you're like, hello world, I'm here, I'm a real estate agent. What's the
Yes.
next step? What do you do?
So the next step is to I actually texted every single person in my phone. And I texted all of them and I said, I am a real estate agent. If you ever need anything buying or selling, let me know. I Facebook messaged every single one of my Facebook friends. I let them know. And then I made like an Instagram post with my number, my email, and I just posted that on every single one of my social media accounts. And then I started my database.
Yeah.
Essentially, the database was just a list of every single person I knew with their name,
Right.
phone number, and email address, and hopefully home address if I had it, so I could send them a letter as well. So that was like the first step.
Right. Okay. And so you start selling. Are you getting so like a real estate agent makes money. The students may or may not know this. They make money from both being the buying agent or potentially being the selling agent. Did you get listings? Did you get buyers that were interested in coming? How did that work?
Yeah, so it normally takes about 6-ish months to end up kind of getting any kind of client, just because with real estate, it's a really big purchase or sell that your client is offering. And so in order for you to kind of win that deal, they need to trust you. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times trust comes from either referrals, which I didn't have at the time,
Right.
or it comes from an established brand identity. And that takes a while to build up. So for me, I didn't get any listings or buying clients for a few months. I had met
Nice.
up.
How'd you pay rent? Like 6 months? Would you deliver pizzas or something? What'd you do?
So my parents they were really grateful. I was living with them out of college for the first
Okay.
years. I was paying no rent, which is the best time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, it took me a while to build up kind of any business. I had friends, like I said, that wanted to buy houses, but they end up pulling out, and that's just part of the process.
Right.
And I did my first sale 4 months in. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, interesting. And it's got to be a little nerve-wracking because you're really kind of a novice. I mean, you haven't sold any properties yet. How did you gain the person's trust to be like, hey, I know what I'm doing?
So I found that the best way to build to find just to kind of establish trust with someone was to genuinely be honest with them. And this wasn't me telling them, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or hey, like I've never done this before. What I did was that I actually went to an open house. And what an open house is that, so like if you're driving down the road and you see like, hey, open house this way,
Yeah.
all that is a real estate agent standing in a house that they're trying to sell.
Right.
And so
Usually
what
some cookies or some nice punch or something too, right?
Exactly. So I actually messaged a lot of real estate agents in my area and I asked if I could host their open house for them, because a lot of real estate agents don't really like doing that because they have a lot of listings. So it's a lot of work. And a lot of these things happen on the weekends.
Right.
So I messaged a lot of them and said, hey, can I host an open house for you? And one of them said, yes. So I
Wow.
went to the open house and I picked up their signs and I put them around the neighborhood, stood in the house, and people started coming in.
Right.
And so my role wasn't to sell their house because that was their listing. My role was to pick up buyers.
Right.
So what happened was that some people in the house that I was showing, it really wasn't it was a really old house.
Okay.
So it wasn't updated, it wasn't really easy to sell. And I knew that. So someone came in and they said, "Ooh, this is really gross."
Yeah.
And instead of me saying, "No, it's not," and tried to sell it, I
Right.
said, "Tell me more why you think it's gross."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, the curtains." I was like, "Yeah, the curtains they're pretty yellow. I don't like that either. Tell me more about what you think." And so they just kind of ended up sharing with me a lot of what they didn't like. And
Right.
I just was honest with them. And I was like, "Yeah, you're very valid in that.
Right.
Is there something, there's probably another house down the street that probably meets better what you're looking for. Can I show you?" And they say, "Of course." They come over to me, I get their number, and I set them up on a home search. And her name was Patricia, and she became my first sale. So
Wow.
that was how it happened. Yeah. So she never asked, like, how long have you been in the business, or how many deals have you done? It was just a matter of, did she trust me? And since I was honest with her in that moment, and it wasn't trying to sell her anything, it seemed like she really could trust me. Yeah.
You just kind of have to act as if you've been there for 20 years, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
that's they tell that to teachers that are in their first year, fake it until you make it, right? And it's like
Yeah.
students sometimes can smell blood in the water to some degree, but for the most part, most teachers are going to figure it out within the first semester.
Right.
Okay, so you start selling properties, and you told me that you all of a sudden became kind of a wholesale guy. What does
Mhm.
that mean? And you were representing a hedge fund. How'd you get to know them?
Yeah, so I ended up kind of transitioning to more of wholesale investment type real estate, kind of when I realized, you know what, this is going to take a long time for me to really build up my residential business.
Right.
I also wanted to get married soon, and so I was trying to save up for a ring, and I knew, okay, this is going to take a while to kind of to kind of save up. So I wholesaling and investment type sales, you make money faster, you can make money like quicker, but sometimes the
How so?
spreads
How does
or the
that
amount
work?
of money you make. Yeah.
What does that even mean?
So with traditional real estate, you end up making your commission once the deal is closed. And
Okay.
a
You get
normal
like
process.
3%. You get like 3% or 6%. Okay.
Yeah. So say if you sold a house for $100,000, you would make $3,000 on the time it closed. So 3% of the actual sale of the home.
Okay.
But you don't make that money until the deal closes. And it normally takes, the whole cycle is about 60 days. So 2 months.
Okay.
So it takes like 2 months to make a paycheck. And that's if you have a client.
Yeah.
With wholesaling, what wholesaling is, first of all, is it's you going to someone and saying, "Hey, I would like to buy your house for X." And
Mm.
it's you kind of in the intermediary, so in the middle, saying, "I would like to buy your house." You go under contract with them for a set price. And it's you having an investor on hand, so an actual investor with money on deck, where you say, "I would like to sell this property to you." And
Yeah.
what's interesting is that you can sell the property to the investor before the deal closes because you are under contract with the original seller.
Do you
So
find,
what a whole
yeah, so like my
Mhm,
mom, she passed away back in last February, and we had a
mhm,
whole bunch of wholesalers because it was like that was just kind of they followed the trends of what was happening in the newspaper and the obituaries and stuff like
mhm,
that. And they were the nicest people. They weren't rude. They just called and said, my brother was the executor of the estate and just said, "Hey,
mhm.
we're interested in giving you a cash offer for your house, and here's what
Yeah,
we'll offer you." And we probably fielded about 15 phone calls.
yeah,
That's great. Eventually, they found a real estate agent and they put it on there. But let's say, for instance, we would have said, yes, we signed a
mhm,
contract with you, and you
mhm,
would tie up the property at a certain price. Let's say it was at 400,000, and then you go find
yeah,
an investor who's willing to pay 450,000, and you're
yep,
just making the 50K and getting out of it. You're never actually owning the property or doing anything to the property.
yeah. No, the only risk I hold is during the time of the contract. And if all things go bad, I can just pull out of the contract.
There's a
But
contingency,
really, But
right?
really, the thing I'm offering is the ability for a cash offer. Because if
Right.
you list the house with a realtor, you're really probably not going to get a cash offer, most likely.
Yeah.
You're going to get an offer with contingencies or something like that.
Right.
But my thing is, hey, I can give you a cash offer, And the money that I would make is the difference between what I go under contract for and what I sell it for to the investor. So in that case, I put it under contract for 400,000. I give it to my investor for 450. What happens is that the title company, who is the person that actually works on the contract whenever you're working on it, the title company will write me a check for that difference. In this case, $50,000. So you basically get paid that money for providing the service of bringing an investor to the table for that client.
Because I mean, I'm an investor and I don't have time to go. And I think the term is bird dogging, right? Like you're going out and you're trying to find deals. And I was talking with another guy yesterday, Ben Fritz, and let me show you like real quick here. So like I get these, all the time.
Oh yeah,
this guy, he's a wholesaler, and he just basically finds deals, and then he emails all of us investors and says, "Hey, here's what it's willing. Here's what you can offer. This is what I want, or best offer, or whatever."
Yep.
So he's basically just tying up the property. Does he have to have like good credit? Does he have to have like a real estate license? Does he have to have anything?
To be a wholesaler, you have to have this much.
Wow.
You are solely just a person in the market. So you don't have to be licensed. You don't have to have good credit. Anyone of any age could be a wholesaler. If you know someone that is willing to sell their home and they're willing to sell it to you, you could do it today.
Right.
So that's what I learned, and that's when I started going, oh my goodness.
And you don't really have cash. Like you're coming in saying, I'm going to give you a cash offer, but you're only saying that in order to think, okay, I can find an investor who has the cash, and then I can just take the wow. Okay, so that's amazing, because that's my students, that's going to blow their hair back. Because in Rich Dad Poor Dad, they talk about that, and I think it's kind of confusing how that even happens. Sometimes I was reading it thinking, I don't think the students are going to quite get this, because he did that in Phoenix a bunch of times, made money, but then you started representing at hedge fund, and what does that mean? How did that work?
Yeah, so I went from being a wholesaler of my own to kind of applying that to a more kind of official position. And so first, what a hedge fund simply is a group of people, so like a good amount of people that have a lot of cash.
Right.
They want to put their cash into something that's going to give them more money.
Right.
And so the outlet for them was real estate. So they were a real estate hedge fund.
Okay.
So what this meant is that they had a set criteria. So we want to buy a 1,000 square feet, year build 1970 and up, all the way down the list. And it was up to me to find those houses. So I was actually at a brokerage as a real estate agent. So I'm a real estate agent, actually utilizing my real estate license now, representing these hedge funds. And they're saying, I want these kind of properties, and it's up to me to go find them. And the way that happened for me was that I kind of just was in real estate. Everyone it's always good to know people.
Right.
And one of the people that I kind of came across in the wholesaling space happened to work for this brokerage. And he was telling me that they were doing 20 deals a month.
What?
And he
20 properties a month, one hedge fund?
No, he was personally doing 20 deals a month. At the brokerage, they were buying about 100 a month.
Oh my
so
God.
if you think about that, he was doing on average he was making like $4,000 a deal. So he was making a lot of money. And I
crushing it.
Oh my gosh, that is going to take me 10 years to get there. But my thing was that I had the knowledge of how to do it. I knew like this was the process and you were the place to go. So I ended up meeting with his boss and he hired me. So I started working for the hedge funds in that way. And so from there, it was really great, because all I did is I went back to all of my connections with people that I had with wholesale. And I said, this time, instead of me saying, hey, I can get you a buyer, I can go and find one. It was rather, hey, I am the buyer. Like I will actually write the contract, and I have the hedge fund. Right. And they will purchase it for you. I'm representing the hedge fund. So I'm not even on the contract as the buyer. I will represent the buyer. So you will be under contract with the buyer themselves. So that was a really great sales pitch. Right. Yeah.
But and now the concern that I have here is all of my first time buyers, because you're getting out of college, you're getting your job with Fidelity or with JCPenney or whoever you're working for, whatever corporate office, Staples, whatever, and you want to go buy your first 322. Well, now you're not just competing against other college grads or people trying to do the first time, you're competing against hedge funds for these 322 properties, which is what's driven the cost of all of these smaller little houses up. In fact, I mean, I check the real estate all the time in Coppell. It's very rare you're going to find a 322 that's under 400K, which is really out of the price range for a lot of first-time buyers. Does it concern you that like corporate America is buying these properties and sort of making it really difficult for the first-time buyer?
Yeah, I would say honestly, yes and no. So yes, in the sense that like the money that these guys have is absurd. Like they have a lot of money, and they if they find a property that meets their numbers, I mean they're gonna buy it.
Done. Wow.
The thing though is that what I noticed in the past like year, I mean working for them, all of this is based off formulas because real estate, it's all based on numbers. If they can buy a house and it gives them their return, there's no question. The thing though is that with the prices increasing, and because the way basically a big way that they do it is that it's like pricing of the actual cost of the house over the square footage of the house and see if it makes sense. Since prices have increased so much, a lot of these houses actually don't meet the formulas for these hedge funds. So
Okay.
yes, they do have the money for it, but a lot of the time they're not going to see most of the houses on the market as actually deals for them because
Okay.
they don't make a lot of sense.
Hmm.
So for the person that actually wants to go and buy it, like you as a traditional buyer with a conventional loan, getting the loan from a mortgage, probably might even have a better shot
Okay.
because you're not looking to actually strike a deal. I mean, of course you want to, but you're not looking for like investment purposes, maybe appreciation down the line. So you would actually have the better shot because the fund might not even offer them.
And you know,
So
322s for 300 grand and up, it's hard to make the numbers work with the PITI. It's hard to make it cash flow friendly. Like, I mean, unless I throw a whole bunch of money into it. I mean, we've been looking a little bit more in the Keller area, right near Keller High School, just because the high school is rated so high, and there are
yeah,
little 322s in that area that are 275,000, which a family would probably buy just so their kid can go to Keller High School because it's such a good. You know, it's like if you could find a 275 322 in Coppell, that'd be a deal too, because Coppell High School is so great, you know, or
yeah.
Plano West or South Lake Carroll or one of those, right? So it's like sometimes the school district could be the driver for that. But I do find it was really hard for like a year. I literally stuff would come on the market and off the market. Now I'm starting to see things sit. Now I'm starting to see it was like this, and then it was like, and then the interest rates went up, and then it was like, and now it feels like it's kind of coming down.
Mhm.
So do I need to wait 1 year before I go find my next deal, or should I buy now?
So I would here's the thing. Nobody can predict the future, honestly.
What?
No one,
Come
yeah,
on.
it's surprising, right? No one can actually predict the future. And so I think it's in Rich Dad Poor Dad, but there's kind of like a philosophy of wealth building
Yeah.
that says the people that built wealth, the thing that they did differently than the people that didn't build wealth, one of the things is that they invested when they knew they could without like waiting on the market.
Okay.
Now, there are times to wait on the market if something like genuinely doesn't make sense. For example, the hedge funds pulled out of the market because they aren't meeting their numbers. They're not going to continue buying when they're like, oh, I'm not making money.
Right.
But if you want to buy a house and you have the ability to, for example, I bought a house a month ago,
Okay.
and it made sense for us to because we're having a baby soon. And
Congrats.
yeah, thanks. And our apartment lease was expiring, and so I knew it wasn't the best thing for me to rent another year and
Yep.
then not build equity. And it's like, you know what? Is my price of my home going to go down? Probably. But here's the thing, and this is something that I like always go back on. In the past, I believe it's 20 years, maybe even 30 years. The average appreciation on houses all across Dallas Fort Worth has been 3.5% year over year.
Right.
And so, for example, in 2021, I believe it was like 21% appreciation. It was
Right.
ridiculous. But in 2009, the year after the financial crisis, it depreciated. But
Right.
honestly, the only time houses have ever depreciated was in 2009.
Hmm.
Every single year for the past 20 or 30 years, I believe, it has appreciated, even if it's like 0.1%. Numbers have gone up. So if you think, should I not buy? Should I not buy? Texas real estate is an incredibly safe investment.
Everybody's coming here.
Yeah. Say what?
Everybody's coming here. It's like it's getting too crowded. It's starting to be like Orange County or something. You know,
Yeah.
you're like, people need to go somewhere else. You know, but it's like the traffic in the morning, like freeways, and but it's like it's a sought after area because the low taxes for corporations. You know, when I moved here in 2002, I bought every property I could get my hands on, and they were all about 85, 95,000 in the Keller area. I mean, and it tripled in value, and it's been wonderful. But yeah, for the first 10 years, they didn't do jack squat. They were like, I mean, it was like, I mean, they were worth like 105, and by 2012, they wouldn't done anything. And I was like, darn you, Texas real estate. And then all of a sudden, like, oh boy, like, you know, buckle your chin strap, because it got crazy for the next 10 years. The market just went bananas. And I think sometimes we have to understand that we're in this for the long game. If that's for me, it's all about passive income. I don't want to, you know, I want to be able to just make money every month that comes to my mailbox, and I don't want to have to work. I have a property management company that takes care of it for me. I don't want to deal with any of that. So we don't have any debt. We paid off all our rental properties. We paid off our house. We just have zero debt. So like and when we have cash, we're looking to try to put it somewhere, whether it be a REIT or whether it be rental properties. All right, let's move on here. Let's take a look here real quick at some terms that we have. And so I think for my students, I know we've lectured on this a little bit, but how important is a pre-approval letter? Does it matter?
Very important. So what a I know you guys have talked about this, but what a pre-approval letter is that it is an official piece of paper. You can think of it this way: from your lender, who is basically representing the bank, that says you, as someone who wants to buy a house, is able to buy a house if you are in good standing with America, with your credit, for a price of X. So they will literally tell you that you can afford up to $400,000.
Would you show a property to somebody who didn't have a pre-approval letter?
I've really tried not to. Some people want to, and you got to kind of like, hey, let's just go with the process. But I really try not to. The reason being is because if you want to look at a house that's worth $500,000 and you're like, oh my gosh, I love it, but your pre-approval then comes back that you can only afford something $400,000 or less. Then that's a really hard thing to swallow, because you have to now like drop your expectations, and then you're looking at something that really didn't even make sense for you to look at to begin with.
You test drove a Mercedes, but all you can buy is a Honda, you know, and it's like, you got to know what you can afford and all that. All right. So the next one here, mortgage broker. How important is a mortgage broker in the sale?
A mortgage broker is incredibly important. So pretty much a mortgage broker is just the person that actually, like you said, who they bring the borrowers and lenders together. I would call them the lender. A lender basically is someone that helps you actually find how much you can afford. So whenever you're trying to get pre-approved, they are the person that you go to. So they're kind of like the face of the bank, if you could think of it that way.
Yeah.
They make it personal. Whenever I went and bought my house, I sat down with my mortgage broker, and he walked me through the whole process and made it very easy to understand. And what's really great for them is that they are the person that actually talks with the bank. They are the person that talks with all of the financial things behind the scenes, but you don't have to deal with any of that. You only have to deal with the relationship of the mortgage broker. So very important.
And it's really important to have one that's you can trust. I've worked with some mortgage brokers in the past where I didn't always feel like they had my best interest at heart. Like I felt like they were trying to sell me an arm, or they were like, one time they were trying to sell me what's it when you have bad credit? Some kind of loan that was higher interest. And I got to the table and I'm like, this interest rate's insane. Why are you giving me this interest rate? And they're like, I thought we had this other rate. Like, no, you didn't qualify for blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. And I said, hold on. So I went out in the hallway. I called a different mortgage broker. My real estate agent gave me another one. And so I called them and they were like, we can do, 3.1 or whatever it was. And I went back in and I told them, I said, they're going to offer me 3.1. And the lady literally said, BS. She said the word like that, you can't make that happen. And I'm like, have a great day. She'd bought me a Coke, or she'd brought me a Coke, and was like thinking that was going to make me sad. I'm like, I don't care. Here's your Coke back. Like, I'm going to go get another. So like, I literally walked away from the table, and a lot of people were pretty upset about it. But I'm like, I'm not paying 6% on a property when I can get 3, the other thing that, that kind of concerns me a little bit with real estate agents, maybe you can answer this better for this. Real estate agents and mortgage brokers are paid commission based on the price of the property. So in our class, we talk about really mitigating a lot of our expenses and not getting something that's more than we can afford. Dave Ramsey, of course, is like 25%. You should not spend more than your 25% of your household income, which is really hard in Dallas when your starter home is 350. Like, what do you say to somebody when you say, hey, you're qualified for 450,000, but they're coming to you saying, well, look, I don't want anything more than 250,000.
So ultimately, it's all in the decision of the person that wants to purchase the property. I would say Dave Ramsey, that 25%, that's a great rule of thumb. It is really, really hard to follow though, especially first time home. Our first time home was more than $350,000 because that was just what we had to do. You know, if I didn't want to do that, but it was like we either do this and then build equity and then maybe refinance, which we can talk about later. But yeah, it is really hard. But yeah, ultimately you really don't want to max out your pre-approval number. The number they're going to give you is going to be the max number that you technically could afford. But the number that they give you isn't based on 25% of your income. It's actually based on a higher number, which is, I believe it's 40% of your debt to equity.
Right. And in my first house that I bought, I think I was approved for like 160, something like that. And I told my real estate agent, I really want to look at properties that are, 110 or less. And I mean, she just kept guiding me toward 140, 150, and there wasn't like Redfin back then. There wasn't as many ways it was kind of controlled by the real estate agent a little bit more. And it made me like, like you're showing me this property with it's going to have all these. And by the way, once she showed me this property that was 140 and had a pool and all this stuff, and I was moving from California, I was like, oh my gosh, I fell in love with it. And I bought it, and it was a big mistake. And I wish I wouldn't have, but then again, the next time I was like, sorry, the next property I went and I got a different real estate agent. I was like, here are my goals. Here is what I want to do. If you show me a property over this price, we're done. And I just had to kind of tell but she was incentivized by the price of the sale. So that's just human nature to try to sell what you can, because that's going to get a bigger commission. But I always tell my students, like, you have to do what's best for you, and you've really got to be forthright with your real estate agent to make sure they're on the same page with you as well.
Yeah, and you should interview them. You should get to know them, and if you trust them, that's great.
So interest rates have gone up, and they've like this right here is a nice little 4.5, yay. I mean, yesterday I saw 7.1. So like, oh my gosh, like the good days, the glory days of real estate low interest rates are over. And like, I mean, this is a big difference between this price and this price on just 1 point. Add 3 points to the equation there. Like, how are you getting people to buy houses when the interest rates are so crazy? Because to raise the interest rate is to help stop home sales. It's like to lower the interest. How do you sell that?
Yeah, it's really tough. There are multiple avenues, just like anything, to kind of work around. But one of my favorites is something called an interest rate buy down. And so what this means is that, yes, interest rates right now are about 7%, which is wild. And so, of course, the normal homeowner, especially first-time home buyer, can't afford that because the home prices are already so expensive. And with a higher interest rate, not only are you paying a lot for your house, but your monthly payment now is like $400 or $500 more just because of interest, which is most people can't afford that.
$500 more because of interest.
A month. So what an interest rate buy down is, very simply, is that it's something that the seller can offer that will basically, so the seller can say, hey, I will give you $10,000 of my earnings and I will put it towards your buy down. So what this does is that if you imagine you're basically just giving $10,000 towards interest for the bank. And if you do that, it actually drops your interest rate point by 2 for the first year, and then by 1 for the second year. And then on your third year, it goes back to normal. Right. And so so if you have an interest rate of 7%, when you buy the house, your interest rate is 5. And then year 2, it's 6. And then year 3, it's back to what you originally got it for. And the intention of doing this is so you hopefully refinance within those 2 years to drop the interest rate even lower. So it's a way to do it that has been really helpful, and I found it to be successful.
Interesting. And that's interesting. I was curious what the sales strategy was because it's got to be hard with people these days.
Yep.
All right, so let's take a look at and then refinancing. And this
Yep.
this basically just means to take your 7% loan, and
Yep.
let's say you paid 3 years off on your loan, so you had 27 years left. You're
Yep.
basically starting back at 30. You still have another. Now you're going to be another 30 years, unless you refinance to a 15-year mortgage or whatever. But you're basically starting back from zero.
Yep.
On paying off your mortgage, but you're going to get a lower interest rate. Is that right?
That is correct. And so what you do whenever you refinance is that you go to the bank and you say, hey, my interest rate is too high, I want to lower it. And then you pay closing costs. So you pay, thousands of dollars to have your interest rate basically lowered. But yeah, that's correct. You get a brand new loan, but a better rate. So you're paying less per month.
Okay. So the appraisal, this is supposed to be an unbiased look at what the house is worth so that the bank will say the loan you're asking for 600,000 and the appraisal comes back at 605. Well, then we're going to finance that loan. But what happens when you have the house under contract at 600,000 and the appraiser comes back and says, this house is only worth 550 and the bank goes, oh my gosh, what happens?
So that is the instance of something called the appraisal gap. And when that happens, it's someone has to pay that difference.
Ouch.
And so most of the time, whenever you're buying a house, you actually, normally what you've done for the past year, because it's been so competitive, is you sign something called an appraisal waiver. And what that does is that you're basically signing your rights away that say, if the appraisal gap hits, like if there is a gap, I will incur the cost. So that
just
means
like out of your pocket? Just hand over $50,000.
You would have to bring to the closing table a check for $50,000.
Boy, there's some you deal with some you're juggling some balls here. I mean, this is going to be this is like juggling fire sticks or something. I mean, there's a lot of little things that can go right and wrong. Contingencies, obviously, they write them into the contract in case there's a reason they need to get out of it. What's the most common contingencies you see?
Honestly, so contingencies can kind of all be described in the option period. And so the option period is something in the contract that allows you to back out for whatever reason. And so what happens is that you go under contract and you typically have like a 5-day option period. And in those 5 days, you as the buyer hold the rights to the contract and you can back out for anything. You can back out because the sky's blue, for whatever reason. But a common contingency is financing. Did the actual buyer receive the financing from the bank the lender promised them? That's a popular one. Another one is inspection. And so basically, if the inspector comes out, because they're going to do that before you close on the house, and they find that the foundation is shifted, and the buyers say, I don't want to pay $10,000 to deal with that, they might back out of the contract, and that would be a contingency based on inspection. So those are two big ones.
Ryan, man, I appreciate you coming in today. You've been fantastic. Thanks so much for all the information.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Simpson.